I'm just saying. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. If your skin looked like mine, you were considered 3/5 of a person, and the promise of liberty did not extend to my ancestors, nor women or Native Americans. The Declaration of Independence was written by white men for white men, as was the Constitution. The feelings written into the founding documents were true when the documents were signed, and sentiments have not changed much in the last 250 years. If the Republican Party wins the majority of congressional seats in the midterm elections of 2022, their desire to remake America from the past will be an indescribable fate. Your way of life, our way of life, is on the line if you don't vote. Voting is your weapon. It is your power. And if it wasn't so important, why are over 33 states presently trying to stop you from voting? We can debate if your vote is a right, a privilege, or a responsibility. But what we cannot debate is that the Republican Party is intent on taking, suppressing, or preventing you from assessing your right to vote. Unlike other democratic rights protected by the Constitution, voting rights don't have clear constitutional protection. That is why the voting rights of 1965, the era that I remember so vividly, is crucial. It and the following 4 amendments bind together and have been drafted to ensure that all Americans can vote. The 15th Amendment speaks to the legality of voting because of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The 19th Amendment gives the right of women to vote. The 24th Amendment speaks to being able to vote in all elections, president, vice president, Congress, House of Representatives, and shall not be denied because of a tax or a poll tax. And the 26th Amendment speaks to the right of all U.S. citizens of the age of 18 having the availability or having the right to vote. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 and Amendments 15, 19, 24, and 26 are paramount to protect the legislated voting rights of Black people, women of color, and youth. Since the passage of the Voting Rights Act, there has been a concerted effort by Republicans to dismantle it, and they seem to have found allies by none other than the United States Supreme Court justices. On June the 25th, 2013, the United States Supreme Court held or found in Shelby County versus Holder, quote unquote, that it is unconstitutional to use the coverage formula and Section 4B of the Voting Rights Act to determine which jurisdictions are subject to the pre-clearance requirement of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. Let me break that down. The Supreme Court said the Pre-Clearance Act cannot be used. Southern states and states that have suppressed the right to vote no longer have to get federal permission because the instances of voter suppression was so bad, it had to have federal oversight. The Supreme Court has taken that out. Therefore, the South and states that suppress the vote have been able to pick up where they left off since the Jim Crow era. Most people believed during the civil rights movement that it was unethical, wrong to disenfranchise people when Bush versus Gore in 2000 had to go to the Supreme Court to determine if a recount could continue, there was a 5-4 decision by the Supreme Court to stop the recount. And Bush took Florida by 537 votes, and then the presidency. The results of that election have led to voting rules being used as a method in election tactics. The decision to elect Bush was decided by Republicans, just as Shelby County versus Holder was decided in most cases by Republicans. The midterms election of 2022, I cannot stress it enough, are important. If Republicans regain control of the Senate and House of Representatives, the impact will be catastrophic for people of color, black people, women, the LGBTQ plus community, the disabled, the homeless, the poor, and children. Your right, my right to vote or not to vote is on the ballot. And if you don't use your vote, the Republicans will make sure you lose it. Your vote is a weapon that you can use to elect or fire legislatures and congressmen that are racist, homophobic, sexist, and white supremacists. The Republicans would have you believe that they're instituting voting laws to protect the integrity of the election system. But election fraud is very rare. So rare, in fact, that the combined total of the 300,000 votes and disputed ballots for Joe Biden's presidential election represent 0.15% of his victory margin in the states that maintain there was voter fraud. My viewpoint might sound partisan, but it is Republicans, the Republican Party, that leads in voter suppression or limiting access to the voting. I know the reality of change in demographics in America and the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act have given Republicans the means to legislate their way to maintaining and expanding their legislative power. 23% of eligible voters, approximately 55 million people, live in states that have restrictive voting laws. According to the Brennan Center of Justice, as of January 14, 2022, legislatures in 27 states had introduced or pre-filed over 250 bills limiting voter access. These bills disproportionately affect people of color. The voting laws are mounting across the country,